Tim Loughton.
I beg to move that the Civil Partnership Act 2004 Amendment Bill be now read a second time. And in doing so, I'm very excited, Madam Deputy Speaker, because in almost 20 years in this House, this is the first time that a bill of mine has ever got any airing on a Friday morning, ever. So it shows what happens. It shows what can happen if you persevere, and I do hope the Minister is not going to spoil it when he gets up to signal his vast amounts of support for this very sensible, much-needed measure. Madam Deputy Speaker, the debate over the Same-Sex Marriage Act has passed. The Act has become law. Over 15,000 couples have taken advantage of that new opportunity, and whatever people on the opposite sides of the argument then or now think, the world has not fallen in. But as some of us argued at the time, the extension of marriage then has unwittingly created a new inequality, and a government which argued zealously that same-sex marriage was an equality issue seems to have rather lost interest when it comes to an equality which affects opposite-sex couples. And that new inequality is that marriage is available to same-sex and opposite-sex couples, yet civil partnerships are available only to same-sex couples. I will give way here first and then over there.
I'm very grateful, and I absolutely support my honourable friend's bill. He will recall at the time that the same-sex marriage bill was known as the equal marriage bill by many people. Would he agree that for that legislation to be truly known as an equal marriage bill, his bill is essential to be enacted to make the situation properly equal for both homosexual and heterosexual couples?
Well, I do agree with that, which is why, at the time, I argued this amendment which forms part of this bill, which would have made that inequality that was created, it would have closed that loophole and made that bill more acceptable for people who had various difficulties with it. So he is absolutely right. I'll give way to the honourable gentleman.
I'm grateful to the honourable gentleman for giving way. Many constituents have contacted me about this bill. Different sex couples who wish to give legal recognition to their relationship, but not necessarily to get married. Doesn't this bill deal precisely with that situation?
That's right. And that's what I will come on to explain why I think this is needed. Because what I've described, that inequality, some people may say, well, so what? People who are opposite-sex couples have always been able to get married in a church, in a register office, even in now medieval castles or exotic beaches, or increasingly whoever takes their fancy. But the problem is that a great many opposite-sex couples choose not to go down that traditional marriage route. The Office for National Statistics estimate that there are some just under 3 million cohabiting opposite-sex couples in this country, almost double the figure reported some 15 years earlier, and over a third of them, about 38%, have children. Indeed, cohabitation is the fastest growing form of family in the UK, and we need to recognise that our society is changing, just as we did when recognising same-sex partnerships in law back in 2004, which I enthusiastically supported at the time, and it was right to do, and it was a glaring inequality and injustice that up to then that loving same-sex couples were not recognised in the eyes of the state and enjoyed no protections under the law. And that anomaly was quite rightly addressed by this House, and I was proud to be part of that back in 2004. People choose not to get involved in the paraphernalia of formal marriage for a variety of reasons. It's too much of an establishment thing to do. It's identified as an innately religious institution for many, and even if done in a register office, it has religious connotations. Some see it as having a patriarchal side, so it's seen as some form of social control. It's not a proper partnership. Those are not my own views necessarily, but they're certainly the way that many people see it. There are a whole lot of complex motives as to why many of our constituents do not go down the formal marriage route. They're mostly still in committed, loving relationships. But if they do not want to go for traditional marriage, they have no way of having that recognised in the eyes of the state, just as it was the case for same-sex couples pre-2004. I will, of course.
On that very point, is my honourable friend aware of can you think of any reason why all those who supported the same-sex marriage legislation would not want to support my honourable friend's bill?
Absolutely, and of course at the time my proposal was party policy by the Labour Party and indeed by the Liberal Democrats, and supported by a good deal on our own benches, but for various reasons they voted against the amendment at that stage. But the logic is that, of course, we would want to address that inequality. But there are various practical reasons as well I just want to come on to. Particularly worrying is the common misconception that there is such a thing as a common law wife or common law husband, as a woman typically finds out abruptly on the death of a partner when there is an inheritance tax bill on the estate and potentially on the family home. Of course, I'll give way to one of them.
On that point, does my honourable friend think that if people realise that there is no such thing as a common law wife or husband, that they would then opt for this to give them that exact protection in law so that they would not lose their home, or they would have a protection that they do not have currently?
And that is a very practical advantage from this bill, because there is a great deal of ignorance amongst constituents who think they have these protections. Because if a woman has a child with her partner and the relationship breaks down, she's not entitled to any automatic form of financial support if they're not married. There's no automatic entitlement to property, even if she had been paying into the mortgage. And surely couples should not be forced to choose between having no legal protection or entering into an institution that is not right for them. I will.
Can I thank my honourable friend for giving way? But the other issue as well, surely, which is incredibly important, is the dependency. So therefore, if you are a daughter who is looking after her elderly mother, and your mother dies, and that therefore means that your home is actually in danger, isn't that something else that needs to be looked at too?
Well, it's the future of children, it's the maintenance of children, it's the property, it's an inheritance tax bill that all of a sudden happens, which could lead into the sale of property and you find yourself effectively homeless. All these are potential dangers that people who are not in a formal, legally recognised relationship are currently facing. I'll give way to another friend.
Giving way, and he's making a very sound case, and indeed I was fascinated to hear about the statistics for cohabiting now. And indeed, if we are to build a balanced society, bringing up our children in a fair and good way, surely it is very important to bring forward the ideas encompassed in this bill in order to help society as a whole.
My honourable friend has preempted a large plank of my speech. I think rather than letting everybody pre-run what I'm going to say, I'll get on with saying it and then perhaps have some contributions at that stage. So to come back to the problem I've already identified, where one partner is much older than the other and there's a reasonable expectation that one will die some years before the other, the long-term survivor would not receive the same tax benefits as a married woman or those in a civil partnership, which would be discriminatory towards the couple's children. Even a couple engaged to be married have more rights than a cohabiting couple, and offering a formalised role of opposite-sex civil partnership could save a lot of retrospective ignorance and ensuing heartache and financial implications. Now, these are all reasons for natural justice and protecting rights of partners, behind why I'm yet again promoting a private member's bill to extend civil partnerships to opposite-sex couples, and have been trying to do since the change to the legislation back in 2013. So there's a deal of déjà vu involved in my reappearance on this same subject here today, Madam Deputy Speaker. But without government support, it's unlikely to make headway, and that's despite the fact that it has the support of honourable members from all sides of the House and has instigated a nationwide campaign which has so far attracted over 71,000 signatures to a petition. And I'm particularly pleased that we have the support of my honourable friend for Altrincham and Sale East, the chairman of the 1922 committee, the honourable member for Birkenhead, for Foyle, for Brighton Pavilion, and from honourable members from just about all the parties represented in this House. And indeed, the honourable lady, the member for Rotherham, who speaks for the official opposition on equality matters, put it in her blog that we have the chance to take another step in extending true equality, admittedly only in one aspect of our lives, but choosing the type of partnership that best suits our needs, faiths and aspirations, in giving her support and that of her party to the bill today. And she's sorry that she couldn't be here to give it in person. Of course, I'll give way to the honourable lady.
I congratulate the Honourable Member for East Worthing and Shoreham on bringing this bill, which I've supported for a long time. It's all about equality. I had a private member's bill, didn't get as far as yours, about correcting another anomaly in the law, put in mothers' names and occupations on marriage certificates, and the Honourable Member for Charnwood has taken up the mantle. But it's about equality. And does the honourable member agree that despite the result of the appeal in the High Court, which has been a challenge against, ruling against it, that it's a matter for this House to decide, because it's a matter of great public interest?
Right, and I refer to the case which is in fact going to appeal imminently, as she says. My bill may not get much further than her own if I succeed in talking it out in the remaining minutes to me, so I'll make some progress now, because there are high-profile supporters of this bill, including Rebecca Steinfeld and Charles Caden, who are the couple who instigated this campaign, and I pay tribute to them, who appeared in the Royal Courts in London last November seeking to overturn the government ban on different-sex civil partnerships, arguing that it is unfair because it treats people differently dependent on their sexuality. And in contrast, more recently, Claire Beale and Martin Loughton became the first UK-based heterosexual couple to enter into a civil partnership in the British Isles. The catch is that they had to travel to the Isle of Man for the privilege, who recently and bravely brought in this reform in their legislation on the Isle of Man. So whilst our British Island cousins have made this step towards equality, the government in the United Kingdom on the mainland are claiming, as they did when Rebecca and Charles first went to the High Court in January, and when I first tabled an amendment to the Marriage Same-Sex Couples Act, that such a change would be costly and complicated. And I just cannot see how or why. I'm not convinced by those government excuses. This change is very straightforward. Just as with the same-sex civil partnerships, it would not be possible for someone to become a civil partner with a close family member, or if that person was already in a union, and the union would need to be subject to the same termination criteria. All that is required is a simple one-line amendment to the Civil Partnership Act 2004 that my bill would enact, which is why it's a very short one-clause bill. It could all be done and dusted in committee by tea time.
Will you give way?
I will give way very briefly.
I probably not to interrupt my honourable friend again, but obviously the other way of equalising the law would be to ban civil partnerships for gay couples. I just wondered whether or not my honourable friend would be in favour of equalising the law by doing it that way.
Well, that would indeed provide an equality and close this loophole, but it would be a retrograde step backwards, because for the reasons I mentioned, people don't want to go down the formal marriage route, whether they be of same sex or opposite sex. So we will be denying an awful lot of people who've already chosen to go down that route, and in fact chosen not to convert from a civil partnership of a same-sex couple to a marriage, as they can now do. And clearly they've got reasons for that, of why civil partnership suits them. It's just that those of opposite sex cannot have that same privilege if it suited them better than traditional marriage. So it would be one way of doing it, but I think it would cause some serious downsides as well. So aside, in the government's original consultation before the Marriage Same-Sex Couples Act of 2013, 61% of respondents were in favour of extending civil partnerships to opposite-sex couples. But alas, for some inexplicable reason, it never made it into the legislation, which would have made it a better and fairer act. And when I wrote with other honourable members to the Secretary of State for Education recently, in her reply for why the government were not supporting this, she quoted, as part of the exercise after the same-sex marriage bill came in, we examined whether or not people supported extending civil partnerships to opposite-sex couples. The majority did not. But a very clear majority in a more extensive consultation before the original bill did. So why do their views no longer count? But, Madam Deputy Speaker, aside from some equality question, there's a further major practical benefit in opening up civil partnerships to opposite-sex couples, and that is family stability, as my honourable friend from Taunton mentioned. The Centre for Social Justice has calculated that the cost of this country of family breakdown is some £48 billion each and every year, or some 2.5% of gross domestic product. That is a big problem. It's a growing problem, and it's a costly problem, costly both in terms of finances and socially to our society. Fewer than 1 in 10 married parents have split up by the time a child reaches the age of 5, compared with more than 1 in 3 of those who are cohabiting but not married. And 75% of family breakdowns involving children under 5 result from the separation of unmarried parents. And there's all sorts of statistics about those children are more susceptible to not doing well at school, to not ending up in good jobs, problems with housing, mental health, and so on. That's not to be judgmental about parents who find themselves having to bring up a child alone through no fault of their own, but two partners make for greater stability. And we know that marriage works, and we also now know that civil partnerships are beginning to show evidence of greater stability for same-sex couples as well, including those who have children, be it through adoption, surrogacy, or whatever. So there's a strong case for believing that extending civil partnerships would improve that stability for many more families in different ways. If just 1 in 10 cohabiting opposite-sex couples entered into a civil partnership, that would amount to some 300,000 couples and their children. It would offer the prospect of yet greater security, greater stability, less likelihood of a family breakdown, better social outcomes and better financial outcomes, and that surely, Madam Deputy Speaker, is progress and particularly good for children who are parts of those families. Now, there's a further application, Madam Deputy Speaker, because many people who have strong religious beliefs, particularly Catholics, who have ended up getting divorced, which is in conflict with certain religious teachings, may not be inclined to get married again if they meet a new partner because their church supposedly believes that they should be married for life. In many cases, however, they would be able to reconcile that position by entering into a new formal commitment through an opposite-sex civil partnership. So there are a number of practical, real-life scenarios in which civil partnerships for opposite-sex couples could achieve something very positive that would not be available to those loving couples otherwise. Now, opposite-sex civil partnerships are not something that have been cooked up in haphazardly circumstances in this country. In South Africa, the Civil Union Act of 2006 gave same-sex and opposite-sex couples the option to register a civil union by way of a marriage or a civil partnership on the same basis. In France, the Pacte Civil de Solidarité, or PACS as it is known, was introduced in 1999 as a form of civil union between two adults of the same sex or the opposite sex, and now gay marriage has been added to that. Interestingly, Madam Deputy Speaker, 1 in 10 PACS has been dissolved in France, whilst 1 in 3, many more marriages, ends in divorce. And there is evidence that some of those civil partnerships have created greater stability, whether they are opposite-sex or same-sex partnerships. And if we look at a country countries with both marriage and civil partnerships open to all, like the Netherlands, the vast majority of different-sex couples continue to choose marriage, so it's in no way trying to undermine the traditional partnership of marriage. But a significant minority choose civil partnerships. Couples in the UK should surely have that choice too. And I'm glad in the many years I've been banging away on this subject and the campaign has got greater, support has grown. Indeed, the London Assembly recently gave its unanimous support to this change in the law and passed a motion unanimously that the Assembly notes that while same-sex couples are able to form a civil partnership, different-sex couples cannot. The Assembly acknowledges that approximately 1 in 5 households in London consists of a cohabiting different-sex couple. The Assembly believes that the current legal situation which prevents different-sex couples from forming a civil partnership is unfair and prevents these couples from being able to get legal recognition for their relationship in a way that matches their values. The Assembly recognises that City Hall has often been at the forefront of efforts to extend rights and liberties, and in 2000 it introduced the first ever registration scheme for same-sex couples, and so the Assembly called on the Mayor to support the Equal Civil Partnerships campaign and urged him to make representations to the Government for a change in the law if the Court of Appeal rejects Rebecca Steinfeld and Charles Kyden's appeal against the High Court's decision to reject their application to form a civil partnership. And last week, there was a very supportive article in the Solicitor's Journal where it referred to the current anomaly as discriminatory. And Marilyn Stowe, the senior partner at Stowe Family Law, said to some couples the concept of marriage is outdated. They do not wish to marry, but equally seek a legally recognised civil union where vows and promises to each other are not required. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, there is a lot of support for this measure. I've received many emails from couples around the country who are waiting for this change in the law to be able to signal in the eyes of the public, their friends, and the law and the state that they are part of a loving, secure, sustainable, long-term union. It's just a different arrangement to many other people choose to go down. If I just quote from 2 emails I've received in recent days. Dear Mr Loughton, my partner and I have lived together for 25 years. We are not religious, nor do we feel a registry wedding is suitable for us. We've worked full-time and very hard all our adult lives and feel we deserve the recognition that other couples enjoy. As we get older, they're in their 50s, we feel we deserve the financial and long-term benefits that are given to other couples who've contributed to this great nation, but we are currently being denied these rights. And another wrote, my male partner and I, female, have lived together for 38 years. We do not wish to marry for many reasons. For example, my mother was very adversely affected by marriage in the days when women were immediately ejected from their careers upon marrying, and rape in a marriage was legal until 1991, and my mother's advice was try to enjoy it as it might reduce the physical damage. But we do want a civil partnership. We are now both dependent on our pensions, but if my partner died tomorrow, heaven forfend, I would not be recognised by his pension provider and would receive nothing from them. If we had a civil partnership, they would recognise my claim. Just another example of the instability facing loving couples, in this case together for 38 years, if one of them will happen to die or not be part of that relationship, because the state does not recognise those relationships. Madam Deputy Speaker, that is an anomaly we do need to close. I don't understand why the government reneged effectively on its promise after the same-sex marriage bill to pursue this properly and to draw an end to that inadvertent inequality which came about from that act. But regardless of what we did on that, on that act, there is a case for extending civil partnerships to opposite-sex couples for a whole raft of positive reasons that I've given in my short comments here. If the government is to allow people to be as free as possible to make their own decisions without harming the freedom of others, what on earth is it doing, failing to make it lawful for people of the opposite sex who happen to love each other, for them to enter into a civil partnership when it allows that very same freedom to people of the same sex? The current situation, Madam Deputy Speaker, is unfair, illogical, and needs to change. And that is exactly what my bill will do, and with minimum fuss, and that's why I commend it to the House today.
The question